Hello. Okay, and it's, if my watch is right, it's 6:58 right now.
Mr. Chair, can I just confirm did you receive anything from Tetra Tech?
No, in fact, we are not going to get something in writing from him tonight. He's going to speak and then we'll follow up with something in writing.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure
Yeah, I think he had there was a vacation with his son that kind of intruded. He was trying to schedule it around that. I think his boy was in a competition out west, and being a good dad, he went out there.
We won't punish him for that.
No. And
yeah, I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing something. That's all.
No. We're and yeah, there's a lot of stuff. You certainly sent us a lot of stuff to look at, and okay, let's see here, 6:59. And in terms of board members, good, we've got Nancy. Okay.
If required, can we bring on some of our consultants as panelists if needed to respond?
Yes. When we get, absolutely.
I will ask at the appropriate time for
sure.
if as required.
That's right. And they're probably in the audience right now. The way we're set up, panels and audience. But if they have their name when they sign in, if you can see the name.
Yeah, I see Ron Tiberi is there anyway.
Good. Hey, and there's Sean. Okay. And is Nadir's not on yet, I don't think.
I don't see it.
We'll give him a minute. Hello, Tanya. Hi.
Good evening.
Okay, hi. Yeah, we do need to wait for Nadir. And yeah, Mike Donovan has he's an associate member, has decided he would recuse himself from participating in Tisdale matters at this point. So we are dealing just with four of us, three voting members, and then our associate member, Nancy Green.
Could I ask that Ron Tiberi be invited in as a panelist?
Absolutely. Ron's one of our favorite engineers. We bring him on board.
Hopefully Sean agrees.
Okay.
Favorite, yes.
Hey. All right. Good. So let's just see. Courtney, do you see Ron Tiberi?
Yeah, he's in.
He's in. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't show on my screen. Okay. Oh, I got it. Okay. Yep. Gotcha. Okay. Oh, there's Nadir. Great. Okay. Board members, will you just open up your microphones, please? And it is now 7:02. We're opening the meeting that was scheduled. This is a meeting of the Dover Board of Appeals. It's being conducted through Zoom, and it's also being recorded. I would like our board members, please, to go through a roll call so that we know who is here and participating.
Okay. Laverne Lovell, member.
Thank you.
Nancy Green, associate member.
Thank you.
Nadir Ahmed, member.
Thank you. And George Cimento, chairman. All right. The first thing on the agenda is to continue our public hearing on the application of Tisdale Land LLC for the issuance of a comprehensive permit under General Laws Chapter 40B, sections 20 through 23, to construct a 42-unit, 11 of them being affordable apartment building at 81 and 85 Tisdale Drive. And that is now open. And what I would like to do first is point out a few procedural matters. We have a lot of data to analyze with our peer review consultants. And our developer and I have each agreed that the hearing, which is normally 180 days from the date that we opened it on November 4th, that we should add an extra 60 days to that. So the hearing itself will now continue through July 5th rather than ending in May. That gives us more time to analyze this because it's a big and complicated project. After that hearing is closed at some point, there is then 40 days for the board to arrive at a decision. And hopefully it's a decision all agree with. If not, there are appeal rights, and I won't go into that at all. Now, for our peer review process, we have with us Cliff Beamer of Davis Square Architects. We also have Sean Reardon of Tetra Tech. And is Ezra Glenn here, who is our...
Yep.
Okay, good, thank you.
Here. Yeah,
And
and
Ezra,
also,
Ezra is appointed by, we obtain Ezra services through the Massachusetts Housing Partnership.
actually, George, while I have you, or while you noticed me, I know you said this before the meeting started, but I think you might want to mention about the board member officially recusing himself now that the meeting has officially started, just because I think now that it's
Yes,
started here.
okay, yes. Yeah, board member Mike Donovan has recused himself from further participation in this matter. Mike will be joining us for later matters on this. And this is a very, very common thing. Nothing wrong with doing that. And we respect Mike's decision on this. Now, before we get started, I want to share my screen, and let me see if I can do this. And see if I can bear with me just a sec. Let me just see here. Okay, this was in the materials we requested. We received those March 6th, and tucked away in those is a December 11th letter from Aquarian. And I spoke with the developer with Paul and with his attorney. This letter is a big change for this project. If you recall, Aquarian had committed for a 1-year period as of May last year to provide the water. It wouldn't have enough water for fire. That was going to be done separately. But this letter of December 11th is much different. It basically says Aquarian is not going to provide the water unless there is an MWRA hookup. And I spoke with, or I don't know if we spoke or just emailed Tanya with you as the lawyer, and you have requested that any decision we make, if we do rule favorably, that it have a contingency that it is subject to the water being provided through MWRA. So that
I'm sorry, just to correct that, we didn't say that. We just said that the applicant would be happy to proceed with the application on the basis of understanding that the ZBA could add a condition in its decision that you know, the decision is conditioned upon the ability to acquire water, not necessarily how. But
Oh, okay, so that if another source of water arose,
correct.
but essentially though, what was promised for only a 1-year period by Aquarium last spring, that's off the table. And this is very important. I think it's certainly the comments we have been receiving. There are a number of concerns of people who live there, but water was right at the very top of the list.
We appreciate that, definitely, but just want to remind the board that if first of all, the board can't deny this application on the basis of an inability to be provided water, all right? The case law is very clear in this regard, so that if the town has failed to provide a sufficient infrastructure and keep up its infrastructure for water, and that's the reason why the application is denied, the Housing Appeals Committee will definitely overrule that and say they have to be able to proceed. You can condition.
Okay, I understand your
Right.
position on that.
Okay.
And if you believe the Housing Appeals Commission can force the town to provide water, that's okay. But that will be between you lawyers. All right. It's clearly sensible when you look at this. You certainly want to know that there is going to be water. And that's all. There's no responsible board in the world, to my knowledge, that would approve a project and say you can have your apartments, fill them up, but you're just not going to have water for people. That's just not. But let's not argue that. I'm not going to.
Could I comment there, please? Also.
Yes, Paul.
So obviously we cannot build any project without a reliable source of water. That's not just going to be a condition, obviously, of the ZBA. That's going to be a condition of any building permit. It's going to be we are going to require a reliable source from Aquarian. Also, we have analysed their letter in detail. We understand the conditions that they have outlined in that. We understand the potential issues that's not. It's not a guaranteed that this will happen the way they've said it. We are happy to accept a condition that we meet the requirements that are going to be required to provide a sustainable and reliable source of water to the project.
Okay, that's understood. One thing I would appreciate, and you can't help but notice the date of this letter, December 11th. We have since met December 12th, January 14th, February 19th, and we only learn about this March 6th. We have had a great, I think, at least in my view, great working relationship. If things of this sort come up that really do, that are important, please, let us know on a little more timely fashion. I ask that just because our consultants have been assuming that water was going to be there.
To be clear, Mr. Chairman, and with all due respect, water, we understand that the project can't proceed without water, but the ZBA cannot be focused on this issue. It doesn't have the jurisdiction to do that. All right. I have represented other clients before the HAC with this exact issue.
George, if I think I like your approach of saying we don't need to resolve this with lawyers, but I also do think it's worth noting. I'm not entirely sure that your counsel would agree with the way Tanya's presenting that. So I think actually it's probably worth really stressing that would be a matter for the lawyers. You guys should get your legal information from them. I think some of those involve, situations where the town has inadequate supply to a site that's already served by the town, not something where there's no service already to the site, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want to.
That's
That's right.
Well,
And this isn't the
And in
time.
fact, I see a lawyer here. Kristen, before we get started, if you certainly are welcome to add something to address Tanya's concern.
Thank you, George. Yes, and I essentially will just echo what Ezra said. I understand that that's Tanya, your position. I don't know that we would agree that we would characterize the case law in the same way. So, George, I think I entirely agree with your approach here too. That is a matter that we can address that does not need to be solved in the moment. But I just would like to
For the record, this is Kristen Gagalis, our counsel. Again, we're all being recorded through Zoom.
Oh yes, yeah,
Kristen,
helpful.
please.
Yes, Kristen
Yes.
Gagalis, Anderson Krieger. So I would like to say on the record that I don't, the town does not agree with your characterization of the case law, but that does not necessarily need to be solved in this moment. And George, I agree with your practical approach here of having this out there, but moving on and addressing issues that could be discussed.
Well, thank you. And let's now, we have two of our consultants here. Cliff and Sean, which of you wants
me,
to go
George.
first? Yes.
I have an attendee, Dylan Brown, with their hand raised.
Oh,
Are they supposed
yes,
to be a panelist?
yes. Please, Dylan is the attorney for the trust and essentially is representing the neighborhood because the trust right now, the title to the road is in the name of the trust. So please accept Dylan.
He should be coming in shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I didn't receive the panelist link, so I had my hand raised for quite a little bit. So thank you for noting.
We're still ironing out the kinks, and it's I met again with one of our old timers in town hall today. He said, "Can't you guys go back to in-person meetings?" And I said, "There would be a revolution if we did." So in any event, thank you, Dylan. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Now, Cliff and Sean, which of you wishes to go forth? And Sean, go ahead.
George, if you don't mind, I'd like to, just because I have a couple questions. And this is Sean Reardon from Tetra Tech on the technical reviewer, civil reviewer for the town. I would like to ask, and what I was surprised is that Aquarian didn't really give any sort of quantifiable reasons for denying it. So usually they'll say they're exceeding their water withdrawal permit or they lack adequate infrastructure. So I was just wondering, in the course of the discussions with Aquarian, whether the applicant has got any more detail on the specifics of why they're saying they can't provide the water.
Yeah, if I can answer that, please. So we haven't, and one of the reasons why this was not submitted previously is we were trying to work with Aquarian to kind of figure out exactly what the concerns were. I do believe it is a capacity issue that they are saying. Further to what I said earlier, our approach and our understanding on this is obviously we need a reliable source of water. We need to meet the certain criteria or Aquarian won't serve the project. So we've got to get to that point at some point. But from our point of view, we're happy to proceed on the basis that in the future, there is going to be a reliable water source that meets all of the necessary criteria. My understanding, Sean, to answer your question, is that it is a capacity issue.
Now, a permitted capacity issue or a well?
I don't believe it's a permitted capacity issue. I can clarify that, but I don't believe it is. I don't think they're that close to exceeding their permitted capacity. I'm not sure they have enough to hit their permitted capacity.
Okay. And George, would you like me just to sort of continue with sort of the status of things?
You bet. And thank you. And welcome back from, I guess, was it the Northwest you were with your son?
I was at Mount Bachelor in Oregon, and the last 2 days we were there, they got 4.5 feet of snow.
My God.
Not good for racing,
Good.
but very good for
but
skiing if you know how to ski that kind of stuff.
But you've reviewed the materials that were sent. And
I have.
I'm providing us written comments in the very near future, I would assume.
Correct. So I've gone through in the day since I've been back. I've had an opportunity to go through all the revised plans, and some of the other additional submittal materials. There is still a fair amount of work I need to do, and the status of things is, yeah, I'm gonna have several comments going forward. But if you recall the last meeting, I'd say sort of one of the biggest issues we had was we didn't have very good survey and very good clarity on the property boundary or on the Tisdale Road, let's call it the right of way for now. But that's been remedied. We've got that information. It's very well done. It seems very complete. There's a few missing pieces. For example, there's no water infrastructure shown or underground water piping shown in the street. So we'd like to see if we can at least get that added. But overall, very pleased with the quality of the survey as it came back. One of our other concerns was just the general quality of the submission materials and the plan content and the coordination of the plan content. It's gotten better. We still got a fair amount of work to do to sort of elevate the product and address some of the technical concerns. But again, working in the right direction. And then one of the other things we were looking for is test pit information for basically it underlines all of the design for stormwater and for septic systems. And we've gotten that, and it looks to be complete and looks to be comprehensive. So we've got a lot of the basic information resolved, which is good because it's sort of foundational to our review. And without that, we couldn't move forward comfortably. We've got that information. So now it's about figuring out, okay, how do we review the design? That being said, we struggled a little bit with process, and what I'm usually really diligent about is making sure I have exactly what the record submittal is in I'm reviewing the exact same documents as the board has and as the public has. To that end, I'm usually a bit uncomfortable getting the submittals from the applicant in multiple pieces, because then I just never feel confident that I've got everything or that it's the right documents to be reviewing. So what I'd request is going forward is if the applicant, I assume, is making a hard copy submission to the town clerk, that there be a single PDF copy of that submission, everything in that submission in a single PDF. And then that gets submitted to the town as well on a thumb drive or something like that. So it can be posted to the public, and then I can draw from that, or somebody can send me that, and I know exactly what's been submitted. So like, for example, I've got 2 sheet C1s now, one that was in the civil set and one that was submitted independently. So these kind of things, if we can have it all together in one document, then I know exactly that's been submitted. That would just help things quite a bit. And then if the site plans could all be submitted together under a cover sheet, and that if every submittal material has page numbers on it, so that it just helps in terms of referencing comments and helping people find things. So those are just some process things that I'd love to see implemented if possible.
Thank you, Sean.
So let's just get right into it. Like I said, I reviewed all the plans. I think my biggest issues right now are two or three issues. First of all, the water letter obviously is a concern. Because we're sort of relying on there being some sort of public water supply, I don't see any reason to sort of conflate those issues with the site development issues. There is no way this site can be developed anywhere remotely close to what's shown on the plans with an on-site water supply. So there's the two things are not at all sort of consistent, right? You'd need at least a 250-foot protection radius around the water supply. So there's just no way you could drill a well on this site and supply the water to this facility. It's a practical impossibility. So the water system thing in the way it's described from Paul and such, that, yeah, I don't see any sort of complications in my review. There not being water and it just being a condition that they have to provide water. We just need the infrastructure would need to be shown on the plan so that we can make sure that there's no coordination issues with other utilities, but there's no reason why they couldn't do that. So I think I can still continue that review. Emergency access is still a pretty significant concern for me. Right now, they have a 16-foot wide grass paved driveway shown for emergency access around the building. Fire protection regulations call for a minimum of 20 feet. The fire chief obviously has some discretion in terms of what he can allow and what he can't allow, but the minimum requirement under NFPA is 20 feet, and they only have 16 feet. It's right adjacent to a wall, so obviously we don't want a fire truck driving along a narrow roadway right next to a wall. There's no guardrail or anything like that protecting the drop off to the wall. The wheel path that they submitted goes outside of the access road that they provided, so that's a non-starter. They've got bushes that are kind of in the 20-foot area that's adjacent to the access aisle. So there's a lot of issues on emergency access and really not a lot of space to solve them. Right now, there's only 24 feet from the back of the building to the property line.
And this is all going to be in writing, is that correct, Sean?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So, just a lot of interesting details about it. It appears to be one-way circulation, which I don't know if is viable for the town. So what I'd suggest is once we get our comments back on paper, that the applicant and I meet with the fire chief and just sort of have all these details worked out. And if the fire chief requires strict compliance with NFPA, the applicant would have no choice but to modify the design to accommodate that. One of the other bigger issues is the septic system is large. And I know there's a plan to submit for an alternative technology, but the standard requirement under Title V is that you have to prove that a Title V system could work. And right now, the Title V system and its reserve area basically take up, I'd say, 80 to 90% of the land area outside of on the parking lot side, which means it's under the parking lot, it's under the recreation area, it's under the drive aisles. It's 10 feet away from the front property line. It's 10 feet away from the side property line. It doesn't appear that any of the lighting plans, any of the landscape plans have been coordinated with the septic system plan. And the grade over that area changes 10 feet. So, I think if most of us, when we think of a septic system, we think of a big, flat, open area. That is not at all what's being proposed. So, nor is any profile provider or anything like that. So we still have sort of a healthy sense of doubt as to how that system's going to work, and we'd need to get that worked out. And then the last of the biggest issues is just, again, is coordination among all the drawings. Like, one of the reasons why I'd like to see all the drawings submitted under one cover sheet is to provide a reasonable level of uncertainty that one discipline knows what the other discipline is doing. Now, the good news is the civil plans and the architectural plans appear to be better coordinated this time, but I've got lighting plans that differ from site plans. I've got landscaping plans that conflict with utility plans. So there's just a lot of issues that need to be fixed and need to be cleaned up. Because here's what we got to keep in mind is this is not like a regular development site where we have all this extra space to work with if things don't work out. Like I said, there's no space behind the building. There's very little space on the property boundary. So really, if we find that in practical application, things don't fit, there may not be solutions for them. So they need to be figured out now, and they need to be accurately shown right now. I have a whole host of other comments by sort of discipline, but unless somebody has a specific interest in any of them, what we'll do is I'll let Cliff go, and then we can have the conversation go where it is, knowing that, rest assured, any comments that I bring up tonight and a whole host of other ones are going to be listed in writing, and they're going to need to be addressed by the applicant.
Sean, I do have a few questions. One, traffic. At this point, will we be requiring a different traffic study? And have you formed a conclusion yet about traffic, parking spaces? That was another. It looks like there will be a few more parking spaces based on what has been submitted than was originally proposed. And if these are still areas that are up for needing more time, that's fine, but clearly traffic, parking spots, and then even something as basic as a consensus between you and the lawyer for the trust as to what part of this is road, how wide is it? Is it 20, 21, 22 feet? What, I mean, I'm still not sure. And ideally, there would be a consensus with Attorney Brown on that, because
Yeah.
it's pretty basic.
Yeah, this is where the survey comes in quite handy. So right now, the survey shows a 50-foot, let's call it a right-of-way. Tisdale Drive was constructed, and it appears to be laid out as if it were going to be accepted as a street. Whether it did or not, and it to me is a little bit sort of irrelevant, because I'm concerned about the practical limitations of what's out there. It's about a 22-foot wide curb to curb paved street, which is fairly robust. Usually the biggest is 24. There's a 50-foot right of way, which shows to me that, yeah, there's enough space to make some adjustments if needed, to add a sidewalk if needed.
Oh, hey, would you explain that again? And I want to hear Attorney Brown, because there is this right of way to do more than what is paved presently. It's 50 feet?
50 feet. As shown on the survey provided by the applicant, which is stamped by a professional land surveyor. So I'm going to assume it's accurate.
And that's a right of way granted to who exactly?
Well, that would be, so again, that a lot changes if the town never accepts the road, but it tells me that the intent of the creation of that block of real estate was to support a public way.
Oh,
And it's 50 feet wide, which means it's 50 feet wide of an area that was intended to serve the public access function and public utility function.
all right. Let me ask,
Whether in fact that,
yeah.
whether
Let
in
me
fact
ask
that's
Dylan
not.
Brown, just to weigh in. And again, I'm not expecting a definitive legal opinion right now, but you hear the concern. What are your thoughts, Dylan?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we would disagree with that it's a public way in any sort of capacity. I just looked at the chain of title to Tisdale Drive before hopping on this call today, and the basic gist of what, from a title perspective, what it says is that Tisdale Drive was constructed as a condition to the development of a county court condominium. There have been no express grants from the association to any other parcels, including 81 and 85 Tisdale Drive. So that means Tisdale Drive is a private roadway, which is set forth in the comprehensive permit that was issued to the developer of the condominium. It's a private roadway, and absent an express grant to 81 and 85 Tisdale Drive, we've seen nothing that indicates that the owners of 81 and 85 would have any rights to utilize that, other than, your basic prescriptive easement, at the very end of the day. And our argument against that would be that say they just have the right to access Tisdale Drive to access the two single family homes.
I don't want to so much get into the legal argument. I just want to know, is there?
No.
If
no. The answer is no, Mr.
That were necessary.
And that's based on the comprehensive permit that was issued to construct the county court condominium. It's clear that it says that this is a private roadway unless the town has declared otherwise. And there has been no taking. There has been no public, opening up of that roadway. So based on the document that's submitted on the chain of title.
Okay. Ezra would like to speak, Dylan. Yes.
Sure. Thanks so much. Again, I think this is, as you seem to be stuck with in a number of situations, there's probably something where a bunch of lawyers need to fight amongst themselves, and it's essentially out of your control. Yet you have to do your job in front of you. And I think it's an unenviable position. I think in some ways, what I think Sean was getting at, and I think I would agree, is the position in front of you is, what would you need to see in order to approve this project? And, if that were a 20-foot roadway with two sidewalks and, a double yellow line down the middle and lighting up and down the way, and that's required to make it safe and what you need, That's the condition you put. And then it's on the developer. If they can't deliver that, and I suspect what would happen is they would run out, you probably should make that a condition that be built before anything on site. And then when they went out, tried to get a building permit, or a painting permit or a lighting permit or whatever they need, my guess is the applicants would immediately sue and say, you can't do that. And then they can't get out of the gate unless it turns out the applicant is right, and then they can do it. It's nice because it takes it off your docket, because there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, that's basic, and you've answered that well, because, I don't want to, none of us, we are not going to decide who has the rights, but if we did decide that at least one sidewalk was appropriate, and if we are told, no, you've only got 20 feet to work with, and there's just no room for that, well, that becomes a problem.
There could be a logical, or a technical impossibility of doing this.
Yeah.
But if it's possible and just a legal question, then it's up to them. And what's nice is there's nothing you can do to resolve this issue. Even if you were to say, we believe this is
That's right.
the developers, or we believe it's the neighborhoods, the court, that's someone else's call. So.
Ezra, Dylan, thank you. And, again, this is, but I would, ideally, if there were agreement on something, the width of the road, what is available, whatever, it certainly would help. It would help everyone to know. Ideally. Okay.
George, if I could add.
Yes.
From my perspective, it's technically feasible to accommodate the traffic and the utilities within the space on Tisdale Drive.
Okay.
Whether it's legally feasible, well, that's a different issue. And then just to close a loop on your previous question, as it relates to on-site parking and what we need to do is we need to work through some of these technical details that I have my concerns on the site to make sure that the numbers we're actually sort of considering are achievable. I don't think we're there yet. So I think it's a bit premature to say, well, we're going to have this many parking spaces, because I'm not so confident that we're going to end up with the exact number of spaces that are currently shown.
Okay, well, that's, what I would like to do now, before we go to Cliff, I would like my board members to ask questions, or if you have some concerns, for Sean. And again, Sean will have many bites at the apple. so
yeah,
but this is
they will not be getting a clean letter from me.
And I'm not going to insist board members ask questions, but if you are sitting on a question right now that it would help you to ask Sean, by all means, you may do so. Oh, excuse me. And I see Dylan has his hand. Is that correct?
It is. If I could just add, because at the last hearing, Mr. Reardon asked for some perspective based on the parking that's on condominium properties. So we're talking about parking. I figured it'd be relevant now, or I'd be happy to bring that up later.
Yes.
Oh, that sounds great.
Okay. So Mr. Reardon asked for the essential, what is the parking like at county court? And it's set forth in the documents, but there's actually something a little bit different. In addition to that, so Section 3 of the master deed essentially lays out the amount of exclusive use parking that each unit has. So most of these units, they have their individual one-car garage with a driveway. So what Section 3 of the master deed says is that each unit has 2 exclusive use parking spaces. So they can park in the driveway, as well as along the driveway, they can park in the garage, and then as well as along the driveway that leads in to that garage. But in practice, there's probably a little bit more room than that. Most units on the property can even fit 1 in the garage and then 2 in the driveway. And then in addition to that, there are 12 parking spaces by the tennis courts up at the front of the property. And then the building has approximately 1 to a couple, for lack of a better term, additional visiting parking on site for each building. So based on just if you were going to do, there's 56 units at county court. Just with the 2 exclusive use parking spaces, there's over 100 parking spaces available. But if you were to include the 12 visitor spots, an additional car being parked within that driveway if needed, in addition to the other visitor spots that are located outside of each building, you're probably talking closer to 180 parking spaces on site just for 56 units. So That's the discrepancy that the association is having a really hard time understanding.
Right.
You know, there's 42 apartments for this proposed project, but there's 56 units at County Court. County Court has almost 180 parking spaces to account for that. So we think that they should be held to the same standard as well.
Mhm. Okay, I see, board member Laverne Lovell. Yes, please.
Well, I just have a few comments, like, how much would you have to reduce the size of the project to get the footprint down to a point where you could get enough parking and have the 20-foot leeway for the fire protection? Like, I mean, instead of 42 units, what if there were 30 units? I mean, at what point does the thing become, you know, more conducive to the neighborhood? Less people, less traffic, less massive structures.
So it's,
everything.
your
Just a
question,
thought.
Laverne, I think is more addressed to the developer.
Yes, it
Well,
is actually, yes.
You know,
probably is.
I think here, what I'd like to do, just so we follow this, questions to Sean
Okay,
best. And so what you're asking Sean is, and again, I don't think we have an answer from him yet on the number of parking spots he believes is appropriate. I mean, he will be recommending, we know what the applicant's position is. And if in fact he concludes that the number of spots that are proposed is insufficient, well, from that, Sean, I think would be recommending either the number of units be reduced or something, because there is no provision for on-street parking with this narrow little road. Sean, when will you, you know, we've seen what the developers is suggested, and of course, the thing about studies is they don't all fit exactly into the footprint of a particular project. But in terms of what you provide to us for guidance, would you be recommending an additional report that is more site specific for parking, or how do you go about that?
No, in all likelihood, the first order of business is to make sure what's being proposed and shown on the plans is technically achievable and safe, right? That then you get into sort of the grayer areas, and parking is one of them, because enough parking is subject to your opinion. What we'll do is, but that opinion should be based on achievable representation. So my goal is to get to a point where what is shown on the plans and what you're considering, I consider technically achievable, safe to construct, safe to operate, and permittable under the applicable regulations. Anything sort of in the gray, it's sort of up to the developer to pick their what they want to present within that framework, and then the board will have to decide one way or the other. I mean, typically we use as a guide about 1.5 spaces per unit as a general guide. So that's usually where we'll start, but we need to do that based on a consideration of what's achievable out there, given the constraints on the site.
Okay. Are there any other board members with questions for Sean? And not seeing any, what I would like to do then is turn this over to the capable hands of Cliff Beamer of Davis Square Architects. Cliff, the show is yours.
Hello, everybody. I am Cliff Bomer. I'm the peer reviewer. I'm an architect at Davis Square Architects in Somerville. George, I might ask that you stop screen sharing, then I think all of us
Oh
can
my goodness,
see,
I thought I had turned that off. Let's
see
see here.
each other better.
Gosh, it's share. Is
I
it still
think-
showing?
I think I'm looking at your desk.
Oh, stop share. There it's up top. Okay, gotcha. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Oh
Thank you.
my goodness, I apologize.
I feel less like I'm
Should we?
talking
Should we put
document.
Sean on just for a little bit so people see what he looks like?
I can see
And
Sean.
there's Laverne. Okay, let's go back to Cliff.
Anyway, thank
That's
you.
lovely.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyway, I'll be kind of brief because I think a lot of, there may be some questions, but just to remind people, I sent an initial letter dated January 13th. And the purpose of that letter was really to just enumerate what I considered to be missing documentation, really just to kind of get my review started. I cited a pretty good handful of things that I thought were missing. A new sets of drawings did arrive, new architectural drawings, new civil drawings, and for the record, that even though I'm the architectural reviewer, most architects would really have a problem only looking at the building. They really need to understand how that building sits on a site, how it relates to nearby context. So I really do look at the same drawings that Sean looks at, and I know that he checks out the architectural drawings as well for how the building engages with the site plan. But anyway, some new documents came in. I think they were mainly dated March 10th. I issued a new letter on March 12th. I think it was on the very same day, a few more documents came in.
Yes.
Several more documents came in. And on the 17th, I did a second revision with really just a handful of comments, primarily specific to that handful of brand new documents that I hadn't seen yet.
Yes.
I think what I'll do, I mean, I'm not going to walk you through the whole letter. I think the big picture is that the March 12th submission, as Sean has already pointed out, did move in the right direction as far as coordination of documents. At the time of the original submission, for example, at the time of the original submission, the civil drawings didn't have the same building footprint that the architectural drawings did. Clearly, a lot of work happened since then, and as Sean pointed out, the documents that we're looking at now are much better coordinated between the building and site, including things like where entryways are on the building, slope of walkway going up to the main entry in the building now makes sense. So a lot of things were really squared away and straightened out in that second set of drawings that I got. But on the other hand, in the March 12th letter, and then followed by March 17th, there still are, I guess I would categorize it as kind of another checklist of either some additional missing pieces or questions about what I did see on the new drawings. And I'll really just hit on a couple things, partially because I assume Sean will probably pick up on some of this when we see his written comments, but I'll start as a segue with just site-related things that I saw, and I'll go really quickly. There was a drawing submitted in the newest package, C1A, that did show the 12 multifamily buildings, the 56 units that are also on Tisdale. There is a new drawing that does show the footprints of those buildings, which really helps understand scale and location and where screening should happen, etc. I would ask, though, and this did not appear in my letter, I was just thinking of it while Sean was talking, if that drawing C1A could be modified so that it shows the footprint of the new building, of the proposed building. Currently, it shows the two existing homes on the site. It doesn't show the new footprint, which I think, and all the site improvements that will really help just scale-wise
Okay, and Cliff, you're going to provide something in writing with those additional requests.
Sure, this is about the only additional request.
Okay, okay. But
But
you know,
I-
it
but
would
I-
be helpful.
Happy to do it.
And for the developer, you know, you have based, you know, we have put on the town website, which is really not the definitive source. I mean, the definitive record is basically what's submitted in paper to the town clerk, and Paul, she was delighted with what you provided so far. But I think here, if what you have submitted for the issues that Cliff is dealing with, if that could also be, would that be part of the, let me just ask you, Sean and Cliff, would that all be consolidated into one thumb drive, which would be like 1 million pages, or how do we get to something that's easy for both you guys to work with?
Yeah, the best thing to do is, like you said, everything that is part of the record is a hard copy submittal to the town clerk. What we should have is a PDF of that exact submittal. So if there's a package of materials submitted on December 22nd, there should be a PDF of the materials that were handed to the town clerk on that day. So that otherwise what's going to happen is I'm going to need to go down there, confirm that whatever I have is exactly what's there, because otherwise there's just no confidence that it's exactly the same. If a follow-up plan gets submitted 3 days later, then that's another, in my mind, that's another submittal, and should be compiled into a single PDF so that it can be distributed in totality. And then we have the confidence that we have everything, and that's all that needs to be done.
Okay, let me ask Paul, are these guys speaking the same language you speak? I know engineers and developers, you deal with this more than we.
There's no problem giving it to Sean in whatever format he wants, basically, and I don't mean that we can do it as a single PDF. My concern, especially with something like the stormwater report, which is a 160-page document, is you're suddenly into a 300-page document that's very hard to find anything in. But whatever format it is, it's a thumb drive is also easy. It's easy to compile it all into one document. You will have pages of different sizes, but I can work with Sean. I can do a kind of a prototype if that's and review it with him, and we can put it that part of it is easy. It's compiling the information. How we present the information is completely up to you guys.
And see, we've and the town of Dover, and probably not different from too many towns these days, we like our public to see what's going on with a project with such high visibility. Now, I don't know what we do with the thumb drive in our website. I'm sure it would just have some sort of,
in conjunction with thumb drive, we can always provide an electronic link to it, so they can be downloaded and uploaded to the website. So there's the presentation issue is, for me, once we have agreed the direction of it, we will comply with whatever that direction is.
I think that's good, and and that's helpful to know. Again, our website is simply not going to be reliable enough to be a real record that you need if anything is necessary. So I think.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, could I ask just one question from Cliff?
Yes.
Just on the C1A? So C1A currently just shows existing conditions. Do you want to leave that as C1A, and maybe we even do a C1B showing the new, just because it shows what's there initially, and just then on a separate drawing?
Just a simple context plan, right?
That's fine. I just didn't know whether to put it on C1A and not show the two,
No, that's fine. It's already there. That's a useful document as well. But
we'll do an additional showing the proposed.
Right, exactly. But I think I want to continue this discussion just a little bit longer. And Sean, jump in. I mean, Sean and I have done a lot of these together. I mean, I'm going to jump ahead sort of to the end first and then back up. I think what Sean and I are used to seeing are multiple, iterative submissions responding to comments we make. Sometimes there's a response letter to a report, then there'll be a response to the response, and maybe a response to the response, etc. that goes on. That happens. That's all normal. At least for me it is, and I think it is for Sean. At the end of the day, though, in my opinion, what the board needs is a final submission, a consolidated, conformed submission that takes care of all the ambiguities that Sean and I have seen. And that's what happens is our review, if things are going in the right direction, eventually just kind of peter out. And you get closer and closer to all of the documents really complementing each other properly and being coordinated. So I just want to say that I'm happy to just go to the website. George can tell us when there's new stuff posted, and whatever I see will be integrated into another letter that I'm sure I'm going to write, because the letter I have now is really.
I'll tell you, we don't have a lot of staff in town dedicated to the website. In fact, I have to pull the finance director over the website posting. Again, we're a small town. So I like what Sean is suggesting first, that and that Paul seems to be very comfortable with, that this all be done on a consolidated basis, and that you be relying on that rather than.
No,
I mean, the website probably, hopefully it's all good. I mean, but it's I don't want you to miss something.
No, I'm happy to go that way, but I do want to see what goes to Sean, and I think Sean wants to see what goes to me as well.
Good.
Is that accurate, Sean?
Yes, Cliff, we should be copied on every submittal made to the town clerk.
Yeah,
that's my point is.
Okay.
Yeah. And Paul's got his hand raised because Paul's been good to work with. So Paul,
what I was going to suggest is, if it's a possibility that there's some sort of a share file site, and you can I could date any submission on any, whatever the date, 3/20/2025, and there's a folder, and obviously within that date, then there is whatever submissions were done on that date.
Yeah, the only problem with that, Paul, is it's your hands, and it's not the record. So what needs to happen is you make a hard copy submittal, and then we get a PDF copy of that hard copy submittal.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Its entirety, cover letter, transmittal, everything. And then Cliff and I know we each have exactly the same body of documents. I can cull from, even if the document's 7,000 pages, I can very easily cull what I need from that and then save that separately.
Yeah.
But what I can't do is I need to be able to sort of confidently proceed knowing that I have everything that's been submitted and exactly what's been submitted.
That's fine.
Okay.
And if I could, the other key there, Sean and Cliff, you both made this point. If it's 7,000 pages with a bunch of different things, it needs to be internally consistent. You can't have one plan that shows the building in one place and another that shows it somewhere.
Right.
Like that's got to get ironed out right away, and then any change percolates through the whole thing.
And Ezra, you sort of, it's sort of my end around to try to get coordination is if someone's forced to submit everything together, then it's kind of hard to miss things. Whereas if it's coming in piecemeal, then it's a little bit easier to sort of let things go.
Okay. That's sounding like blockchain, and I kind of like it.
Well, maybe if the chair permits, I'll continue with my site-specific kind of bridge over. And as I said, we may see some of this. Sean may have already picked up on some of this, and we may see it in his letter.
Okay.
But I'll quickly just go through
Please.
some very small things. For example, the utility plan
Yes.
shows the gas line, but the building's represented as all electric. So that's a question or ambiguity. I ask in a couple places in my letter to get a clear documentation of where the tree line is, the existing trees that are left in place, so we have a really good sense of how much clearing actually is going to happen. There is a message or a note, it's not a message, it's one of my notes is there was a comment that the applicant is considering walkways into the woods. And I did point out that, that's a great thing if that can happen, but I did point out they would need to be accessible walkways if there are amenities developed for this property. So we would like to, if we see walkways, I think that's just an expectation that's out there. I had a site-related note about the trash management plan. It appears from the building that the trash exit up out of that I think it's northwest corner out onto the fire lane. That's what it looks like. There's no narrative associated with it, but and that could work. That the trash goes out there and then goes out to the street. I had a question about grass pavers, whether they were suitable. Are these dumpsters? Are they 88-gallon plastic rolling bins? Just to help us understand how that works. Other accessibility, as I pointed out really early on, the walkway in my first letter, the walkway that went up to the main entry of the building, it looked like it probably was well over 5% slope, which wouldn't meet accessibility requirements. It appears that has been remedied, but I couldn't tell the grades across the parking areas, or just have a better understanding. Sean may be able to pick that up better than I do, but there's a certain amount of cross slope that you would expect to see not exceeded in a parking area. Other points I noted in my letter, and this is site related too, that we now do see in the second submission that there does appear to be a play space noted that's right on Tisdale in the area, kind of surrounded by the parking spaces. I had a couple comments on that. One was, is it fenced in? It looks like tot lot kind of equipment. It probably should at least be partially fenced in. I also made a suggestion of having a well-defined direct path from the front of the building across the driveway into that area. It could be a table, a sidewalk level table in the driveway that gets you cleanly across and calms the traffic. We're not talking about a lot of traffic, but I think it would be a nice way to connect to that space with not feeling like you're crossing through a parking area. And the last site-related comment I had was on the pickup and drop-off need. And, with 42 units, there will be, Ubers, Amazon deliveries, et cetera, et cetera. It looks like that drop-off could probably accommodate that, the semicircular drop-off area. But I suggested that they maybe look for another area where move-ins, another longer term sort of, even tradespeople or, bigger deliveries could happen on the site. But anyway, that's all in my letter that Sean has and all of you have had for a week now. So those are the site-related issues that I highlighted in my letter. I think architecturally, a lot of little comments, frankly. I think just to really summarize, the Tisdale already has 12 multi-family buildings. you know, with a total of, is it 56 units in the 12 buildings? So, you know, multifamily buildings are not new to Tisdale. And that to me matters. You know, this isn't a little dead-end street with 10 single-family homes on it. It's a dead-end-ish street with 12 multifamily buildings on it. So conceptually, and, you know, I think even from a scale and massing perspective, to me, I think it's a very good location for a moderate-sized multifamily building. And, you know, what constitutes moderate sizing really has, particularly at this scale, you can't moderately size a 12-story building. That's always going to be a 12-story building. But a building of this size and footprint with sufficient articulation, you know, delineation of floors, bays, change of materials, variations in color, et cetera, it can be really effectively, the scale can really effectively be broken down and I think fit in well to the street. So from a strictly architectural perspective, I think it has the potential to be a very good fit on the street. I do, in my letter, say, you know, don't ask me about whether it's enough parking spaces, whether the septic is working, you know, et cetera, because I don't know. I just can't opine on that. So
Yes.
my architectural comments are just picky, and I guess I would expect another submission that really picks up on the questions I have. Some of them are sort of annotation issues, like I'd asked to understand what the facade materials are. You know, I wanted material call-outs on the building elevations. There were sort of material call-outs. There were actually dimensional call-outs. It said 5.5 inch exposure, 7-inch exposure panels. That makes sense, but I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's vinyl, aluminum, cementitious, metal. So simple things like that. So that would just be a revised, another drawing that really tells us more about the materiality of the building. And I have you know, a pretty good sized pile of those comments that I think are either simple narrative answers to my letter or a resubmission of some drawings. And I did forget one other site thing. I did ask, I think in 2 places in the letter, of why when you come out of the main entry, there's a sidewalk that brings you towards Tisdale and then it stops. It goes in front of the accessible parking spaces, but it doesn't continue right out to the street. It seems like that would be a very simple thing to do, and there actually is a requirement in the Architectural Access Board regulations. You do need an accessible path to a public way, and that would be a very easy way to do it, assuming it met the grade requirements. I think a couple other concerns I have that sort of bridge over into other disciplines would be, for example, the you know, a little better understanding of a transportation demand management plan. And in my case, it's specific, I think, to bicycles. There is a bike room shown now, which it wasn't previously, so that was good. But we don't know how many bikes it holds, and that's a really important question. You know, many towns have very strict ratios. Many towns have a 1.0. Every unit should have a bicycle associated, secure bike space with it. You know, this is again something that I would expect to see on a plan. I see the bike room, but how many bikes does it hold? And similarly, there's bike rack now indicated. I believe there is a bike rack, but we don't know how many bikes for visitors, how many bike spaces there are for visitors. I asked a number of questions about, there were reactions to the sustainability narrative. Dover has not adopted, Dover has adopted the stretch code, but they haven't adopted the specialized opt-in code. It is the way the world's going. My suggestion is that the owner, for the long-term operating expenses in the building at a minimum, should consider complying with the specialized code, which is a much better performance level, saves everybody money, including the developer. Just trying to see if there are any other things that aren't just kind of easy to find in the letter. One point is the, and this is architectural, that you started tonight with the Aquarian letter, and the Aquarian letter says 40 units, but the architectural plans are still showing 42 units. So I don't know which, that, to me, that's an interesting question.
If I could briefly address that one, please. So I think if you look at the Aquarian letter, it says 40 units, 80 bedrooms, whereas it is actually 42 units, 80 bedrooms. And if I'm not mistaken, Sean, you could clarify that, but the water is based on the bedroom count rather than the unit count.
Typically, yes.
So it's a mistake on Aquarian's part. It's based on 80 bedrooms. The unit count typically is not as material as the bedroom count, is my understanding.
And if they're not going to serve 40, they're not going to serve 42.
Yeah.
Well, that totally makes sense, but I think there are actually 82 bedrooms.
Let me confirm that, because I thought it was 80.
Yeah, there are 9 1s, 26 2s, and 7 3s.
Let me clarify that.
Yeah, okay. But I really don't think you want me to read everything in this letter, but I'm certainly open for questions. And I guess, as I said, what I would hope, because I think most of my questions are pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So I maybe, as I said, a response to that letter, and then reissuing some documents that are just missing some information that I think the board needs to hear to really inform their decision.
And Cliff, you've been great. I mean, you responded with your initial letter, I believe, in January. You followed up in March, and then additional material came in and you supplemented your March letter. So we've only got 3 very detailed things from you, which are helpful, I'm sure, to the developer. One thing I'd like to just, but may I just, Laverne, I will get to you in just a minute.
Okay,
Something else. Normally, now again, we've gotten a plethora of emails from people who live on Tisdale, pretty much with, understandable themes that are being addressed, road, water, safety. I did get a letter from a person who does not live on Tisdale. His name is John Vunatsos. He lives on 65 County. And Cliff, you may not have had a chance to really look at this, but he did ask, and Sean, I will get this to you also to see if it's practical or something but it sounds like something a person might ask for. And it's basically to continue with some of the fencing, I guess, around to provide for some buffer for his home, because he is pretty well surrounded by the developments. And if that is something that's possible, it certainly would be good to know about that. Sean, I'll get that over to you, but I sent it to
I did see that, and I think it's another reason that context adding more context to the submitted drawings will help, so we can see exactly where he is, relate that back to where the tree clearing line is, correlated with the landscape plan. So, and that, he's not on Tisdale. I mean, what I had suggested was just supplementing C1A. C1A also doesn't show properties in the other direction. So that really helps. Those kinds of materials really helps everybody know what's actually being proposed.
Yeah, he's got a nice sketch that he attached to the letter.
I saw that. Yep.
Well, that's great. And now, Laverne, you had your hand up, please.
I was just wondering if Cliff has taken a ride down the street and actually looked at the site.
I sure have.
Okay, because to me, it looked like a little village of houses set here and there, and now we're going to put this huge sort of behemoth at the end of the street. It does change the character of the whole look of Tisdale Drive. That's just my comment. I didn't know if you had actually seen it.
Oh yeah, no, I've been there, and I guess without reiterating, what's interesting about this site is, you know, it's at the end. It's at the end of Tisdale, you know, virtually at the very end of it. And I think the key, as far as, you know, architecturally of how it's perceived, is generally two things. One is, as I was saying earlier, the massing of the building, and there are some perspectives included in the drawing set, but then the landscape plan as well. I did make some comments in the in my letter about considering enhancing the landscaping both along Tisdale, but also within the parking areas. With, you know, the proposed parking areas. For me, those are the things that determine how well a building fits.
I think it's hard to hide a 4 or 5 story building with landscaping, but we'll see what they come up with.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, there's also limited opportunity to do it because most of the
No
areas
room. There's no room.
Yeah.
Well, it's the septic system too. So there's almost very little room to plant trees in and out in that area because the septic system's beneath it.
Aha. Excellent point.
Okay. Well, I think here, let's, and we've got a couple of things to think about, certainly the next time we get together. And we certainly want to be sure we've got as many bows tied up as possible for you know, your submissions, both you and Sean, so that the developer can respond and that we get this great consolidated hunk of data that you know, is representing all of the paper filings with the town clerk. And we should, I think, probably not plan to meet until we've got a reasonably good idea when it makes sense to meet again. We do have another matter where we're going to have to continue a hearing that looks very contested. But Sean and Cliff and let's and Paul, what's a good time for us to schedule? What time zone? And then board members will see if we can all get together. Yes.
You might just, if I could jump in and just be the harsh taskmaster for just a sec. I think, first off, I really do appreciate how much you've been keeping things moving in a positive direction. I think it's really a wonder. I want other chairs to come watch the tone you set here. But I do worry, I think somebody needs to be a little stern with the applicant. And so I'm going to take that on. And it's not my natural mode, but I'm going to try. I do want to be clear. We've noticed a lot of issues as we've done this review, you know, everything from small errors to big changes, you know, and some of that is natural for the process, but I think this is a lot more than normal. You know, that even sort of clarification about whether there's access, the water supply, the plans not matching up. To some extent, we're ironing it out, and that's great. We're moving forward. But I do think there's an aspect of this which almost makes me feel like that we're figuring it out on the fly, and I really do want to make sure that doesn't happen. Mostly for the reason that every time something's submitted, your whole board has to look at it. The residents have to process it, or might get confused about what's the current thing. And this is probably most important to the applicant. They're paying their own people to generate it and 2 peer reviewers to review it every single time. And so I really do want to stress, the more we can be sure we're, that everything gets tidied up and then we get, clean copies of things. It would really help everybody stay on track and move it forward. I'm not an expert in engineering or in law or in architecture, but I am an expert in the process of moving this stuff forward. And for my money, that's really the number one thing is, take the time you need to get a nice, clean package, respond to everything, and then get it to us and really make sure we do have it all. And, if that means this needs another extension, whatever, fine, but there's very little reason to keep coming together for meetings where we just say what's not yet there. That's all. Thanks, George.
I think that's a great point. And I appreciate your nice words. And frankly, we've got nice people to deal with. No, I've been very pleased with all of this. I think the next steps would be for our 2 consultants to be sure they have got over to Paul exactly what they want. Then for Paul to respond. So let's assume that that Paul has got everything within. Is it fair to say, Sean, because Cliff, you're further along, and I think, and Sean's actually got an awful lot to address. Sean, when will you have a letter you are satisfied with for Paul?
By the end of next week.
Okay. Or you said early.
And I'll continue. Paul and I have a dialogue about expectations and issues. So, we'll continue working cooperatively. That I see my role as getting a document set that the board can make an informed decision on. So Paul and I have worked in the past to do that, and we'll continue to do that.
Okay. And so, are we thinking? And then, Paul, you're going to need time. To be sure you do this right. Would the week of April 14th make sense? If you get things next week.
What I would say is we need 2 clear weeks after we receive the reports from both the reviewers to make our submission.
Okay.
Obviously, the team need time after that to complete their review as well.
Well, okay. So then, so you guys go back and forth. That ideally, Paul, then your material, if we're thinking 2 weeks off of a day, then rather than actually April 17th would work, or since Thursdays are kind of a good day for us.
So I would suggest we would be looking to submit based on the schedule that's discussed. We would be looking to submit on or before April 11th. So the over to you guys then.
Okay. Well, then I think, and what we could do then is meet, and when you submit, now at that point, the ball is back in the court of Cliff and Sean to see what they've got. And probably it wouldn't, I don't know that we need to meet for you guys to then exchange your concerns after you've got the April 11th stuff. You're going to have concerns, and that would be, I think, probably another week to respond. So that would be like responding by the 18th, just thinking. And so we should be in a position, I would think. Would it be possible to think of the 24th, that Thursday, as a day? Is that reasonable to think that at that point we've really got a real package to look at? That sounds reasonable to me, but I want to be sure with you three, and Ezra, you've been great. But
the timing sounds sufficient. Unfortunately, I have another hearing on the 24th.
Okay.
I think Sean does too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
We're working
yeah.
on
And
another
Paul will
project.
be happy. This time I'm the applicant, Paul.
Suffer some of the pain.
But Cliff is still the reviewer.
Yeah, this time I'm beating up on Sean on the 24th.
Well, listen,
About the 23rd. What
yeah,
about?
well, you
That
know,
works.
I'm actually out of town that week. Sorry.
what?
I'm going to be out of town that week. I'll be traveling.
Oh, well, we need you. Well, let's go then to the following week, which would be May 1st, Thursday.
That works.
I may have another conflict with the same project. Is there any way to do it on the Wednesday, the 30th?
Sure.
Works
Yeah.
for
Okay
me.
with me if it's okay with board members and everyone else.
That works.
Works for me.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
perfect. Thank you.
Great. So we will,
If I may say, if
Yes,
I think Sean and I and possibly Cliff as well, also that we will have an over and back probably between then, just making sure that we're providing
That's
Yes.
a good
specific
idea.
information that's been requested,
If not
That's a
several.
good idea.
if not
Yeah,
several.
no, that's fine.
great.
That'd be perfect.
Because, you know, my thought is frankly, it's just in terms of our time, because, you know, like you, we've got other things as well. You know, I want to be copied, obviously, but
Of course.
but I don't want to be thought of as any kind of obstacle to you fellows dealing with each other and getting us something. So
George, just to be clear, the only reason I would meet with the applicant is to ensure the deliverables, the submittals are meeting expectations. So nothing in any offline conversations has any bearing on anything, because it's all to make sure it's documented properly and clearly in the materials submitted to the board.
oh, well then let's plan to, and board members, April 30th, 7 p.m. Does that work with you? I want to be sure.
Yes.
Yep, it's okay with me.
Yes.
Okay,
Works for me.
excellent. Okay, well, that is super. Yes?
Vin O'Brien has his hand raised.
Oh,
Can I allow him to speak?
yes, you may. In fact, well, Vin is scheduled for 8:30. And yeah, I think at this stage, why don't we end this session of the Tisdale hearing?
Great.
And you know, Vin is going to be joining us on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Here, who have requested something that requires our consideration.
Do you
Tisdale,
need a vote, just a vote to continue to the 30th?
yes, okay, yes, we have a formal vote to continue to April 30th at 7 p.m.
So moved.
All in favor?
Second.
Okay, and I think we have to actually sound off to this. George, okay, Laverne, yes?
Yes,
Nancy Green, yes.
Nadir Ahmed, yes.
And George Chimetto, yes. All right.
All right. Night, everybody.
Good night,
Thank you all.
everybody.
Right, thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thanks so much, George. Thanks all.
You bet. Okay, it is 8:26. We've got a couple of minutes and then we will have well, let me tell you also, just looking at our agenda, got a few minutes to tell you, you know, we had a request for a variance on 12 Oakley from Pat Corrigan. And very, very pleased to say that Pat took, Pat's engineer, got a sense of the meeting, that there probably would not have been a variance, you know, for this. And so they have redesigned, and at this point, apparently our building inspector has approved the design without need for a variance. And Ron Tiberi, the engineer, on behalf of Pat Corrigan, emailed me, and I've countersigned that the request for variance is dismissed.
I went by there today and looked at it because I was
Yeah.
looking at 15 Parks Avenue. I wanted to see what that looked like too.
Yeah,
So what
good.
they did, they moved the stairs back and then the landing is just a big granite slab. You know,
Oh.
there's no rail or anything, the bottom landing. So that still sticks out into the setback, but it's not stairs. It's just a landing.
You know, if Walter approved it,
Yeah, it's like a big rock, a
Yeah,
3 by 3 foot rock that the
And- and-
engineers
and-
put down.
well, basically, he's got building inspector approval.
Yeah.
I don't know that we really are in a position to
No, it
second
looked
guess
fine.
that.
It looked better.
However, if there's a neighbor who doesn't want it and that all gets, I mean, again, that's
Mm,
process, but I think for us at this stage, it's,
Done.
it's just
Done.
been dismissed.
George, while we have a moment, should we approve or vote in the minutes from the last meeting? I had the chance to review them, and so we have a couple of minutes, might as well.
That's a great idea. And okay, and let me just share the screen and then I'll try to remember how to stop sharing. Hang on a sec. Let's see here. Okay, we're dealing with the February 19th minutes. These were circulated, and so these are as circulated. And does anyone wish to comment, or are we in a position for a motion to accept them?
I move that we accept the minutes as written.
Seconded.
Okay, and all in favor, and call out your names, please.
Nancy,
Aye. Laverne Lovell. Go ahead, Nancy, sorry.
Nancy Green, aye.
Nadir Ahmed, aye.
And George Chimetto, aye. Thank you. Good. I'll see that these get
Sorry.
to the.
Sorry, one more thing. If we can let Mike Donovan into the as a panelist now.
I'm
Right,
sorry.
yeah.
What?
We want to let Mike into the as a panelist.
Oh, yes, that's right. And good. So let me first let me stop sharing if I can.
Well, but he might want to. He should vote on that too, right?
Oh, actually, you know what? That is, you are. Although actually, he as an associate member, it's good to have him do that. And but let me. I mean, what we always show that the associate members approve.
Yeah.
But let me just see if. Hold on a minute.
Looks like he's in.
Good. Okay. Is Mike in now?
Mike, you're muted.
Better?
Good. Okay. Hi, Mike.
Hey, guys.
Hi, Mike.
Great. No, Mike, no picture?
Nah, I've got a bad cold. You don't want to look at this.
Okay. Okay. Mike, I think we can also open this for the minutes at the meeting. As an associate member in attendance, would you approve them?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. We'll reflect that in the record. Thanks, Mike. And at this stage, we now have we are 8:31. We had a meeting scheduled, and let me just see here. Okay, a public hearing. This is we're going to open the public hearing on the application of Thomas and Christine Heer. This has been advertised twice as required by law. The application relates to property identified on Dover Assessor's Map 6, Parcel 103. The address is 15 Park Avenue, Dover, Mass. The applicants request a finding that a portion of the town-owned land known as Oakley Road on the western boundary of the parcel is not a street, and that the setback requirement from said portion of Oakley Road to construct or relocate an accessory building is accordingly 7.5 feet and not 20 feet. The applicant specific, they are not requesting a variance, but they wish us to essentially determine as a matter of law that Oakley Road is not a street, and that therefore the 20-foot setback requirement does not apply to the structure they hope to build, which would be a garage. So that is the case. And what we have here Vincent O'Brien. We know him well. He represents the applicant in this matter. And we also have, and let me just see, do we have Mr. Doherty here? Is there anyone here? There was a detailed submission from
I'll have to let
It
him
appears
in.
it appears that he's in the attendees room.
what can you see him?
I'm moving him now.
Oh, good.
George, could you take your screen and
Oh,
open it?
am I still screening? I
Yeah, no worries.
There, okay.
There you go.
Good. Yeah, that's up instead of down. Right? They move you in two places. All right. And I thought, and we have Kristen Gagalis with us, our attorney. This is not an open and shut, easy thing. Certainly for me to have a recommendation at this point, and I thought it would be most helpful for the board that we do this in a couple of segments. That we would have the attorney for the applicant present basically the legal theory, why the setback should be 7.5 feet. And then we would have the lawyer from Nutter, who I believe also lives on the adjacent property owned by his wife, that he would then respond. And I would like our attorney, Kristen Gagalis, to listen to all of this. What I thought then is we're not going to come to a decision tonight, that we would give our attorney a chance to analyze and have a recommendation for us, hopefully definitive, but if it's a gray area, so be it. And that we would then meet again and have a decision one way or the other. And we would also, to the extent it is legally applicable, and I think it may be, we would also schedule a site visit before this next visit. So the first thing is for the attorneys to speak with us, and again, not to speak to each other. Again, just address the board, please. And Attorney O'Brien, you are the applicant. The floor is yours, please.
Good
Give
evening,
us-
everybody. Good to see you all. I was watching your prior hearing. I can see it's exhausting, and I don't want to do the same to you. I think George said it. The succinct question is, what is a street? And in this particular instance, it's a little different than any time I've presented anything else to the board in the past. As especially Laverne knows, I've done 40Bs, I've done variances, I've done 40As, I've done all kinds of, everything you can think of. This is different. And it's like trying to explain the Pythagorean theorem. I can try to tell you what it is, but it'd be a lot easier for me to show it to you. If I were building a deck, I could show you the Pythagorean theorem in 3 seconds. But if I tried to explain it to you now, it would never happen. So following up with George, I think it'd be incredibly instructive for the board to go see what we're talking about. And then subsequently kind of have a more detailed discussion about what a street is. I have submitted some preliminary information to George, and I understand Attorney Doherty has also. I think prior to the next meeting, depending on how this goes, we can probably both fine tune some of the information. And when the board members are able to see what we're talking about, our discussion and our documentation will probably make a lot more sense than it does in this theoretical fashion. What's kind of interesting, the primary case we're working on, relying upon, was actually tried by Arthur Krieger, who is or was a senior partner of Kristen's firm. So I'm not sure that gives us any points, but it certainly makes me feel a little better. And as an other interesting aside, just following your case, the prior matter you were hearing, the same exact vote for Tisdale was the vote for this acceptance also. So that's kind of an interesting question. Is it even an accepted street? But putting that aside for a second, whether it's an accepted street or a private street, I think the same issues apply. Is it or is it not a street? There's certainly an Oakley Road, and there's an additional spur, for lack of a better description, and visually and legally, is it a street? So, I mean, my preference is not to especially at 8:30 at night after what you guys just went through, spend that half an hour trying to explain things and you try to visualize it. I think, and in the past, this has been to our benefit. Sometimes it hasn't worked for me when we go to the site, and sometimes it has. I think recently we did the project in Claybrook, and our whole application changed as a result of the site visit.
Yeah.
So I think it would be beneficial for the board, have a site visit, and either the same night or shortly thereafter, have a meeting. And at that point, what we're talking about will make sense. And I think I'm assuming Attorney Doherty would probably have a similar opinion, that having some knowledge of the site and where his property is located and where the neighbors are located and how it all interacts would be helpful. And then at that time, we can have a meeting, see where we go. If we get to a end, fine. If you need more information, we can provide it on both sides. But I just, it's easy for me to explain what's needed in a variance. It's easy for me to explain what's needed in a 48 Section 6 application. It's not easy for me to explain this unless you can see it. So it's really the board's position as a Board of Appeals to decide whether this portion of property, presumably owned by the town, is or is not a street. If it is a street, one setback applies. If it is not a street by law, then another set of setbacks apply. That's essentially the issue.
Vinny, I'd like to ask you just one question. Again, just looking at 185-5 of our zoning bylaw, that's where there is a definition of the term street. And that is a public or private way, alley, lane, court, or sidewalk, which is open or dedicated to public use. It's an or, not an and or. In your view, because if there's a determination, if there needs to be a determination of whether it is open, certainly a site visit makes a lot of sense. If instead that or actually has some meaning, you don't need to establish that it is open. You just need to establish it is dedicated to public use. At least that's the way I read the statute or the bylaw. And complicating all of this, dedicated to public use, certainly we know the town accepted this road. But I think we've learned that acceptance has never been recorded. So
I think
what I'm really looking at this just superficially, wanting to know whether this unrecorded acceptance that is that enough to make it dedicated to public use and therefore a street?
Yeah, well, both interestingly enough, Tisdale, Draper, and Oakley were all in the same certificate of vote, correct?
Yeah.
And the town accepted them. However, the next section of that requirement in the statute, section 80, L 82, section 24, says that within 120 days, the town has to acquire ownership. And I don't think the town's acquired ownership in any of these pieces.
Okay, okay, so there is more to it than just that one statute. All right, that is very helpful. Let me first hear from your neighbor, from the fine firm of Nutter, and the floor is yours, and let's just make sure, okay. John Dougherty?
Yes.
Yes,
Hi.
please. Okay, good. Identify yourself for the record and then proceed.
Great. Good evening, everybody. John Dougherty, 11 Park Avenue, here on behalf, as a resident, on behalf of my wife who owns the house, technically. A couple comments. Mr. Chairman, you touched on it. So the words matter here. So street is a defined term. It's capital S, and as you say, it's in the disjunctive. So, you know, there are trees in a portion of that stub of Oakley Road, but the important part are the words dedicated to public use. In the 1998 town meeting vote was expressly clear on that it was accepted as a public way. And if you look at the legal description, it actually includes the unimproved part. So it goes all the way to the end of Oakley. The statute, section 23, on the laying out and acceptance, does not require a recording. Section 24 that Vinny's talking about is where there's a taking. And for town streets, town roads, Dover, to my knowledge, does not take fee title in those roads. So you would only do that if you were taking fee title. So here it's a public way. And I respectfully don't think that recording is sort of any importance here, as it's a public way. So, you know, based on the, you know, having found that it's dedicated as a public way at a town meeting, to find that it's not a street would require this board to determine that it is not dedicated to public use. And I would say that would have to be done at town meeting. There was town meeting to dedicate it, and then you need town meeting to get it out.
Well, so your view basically is that recording is not necessary for this to be a public way if, in fact, actual title was not intended to pass, but only essentially some sort of right to make this a public way. Is that recording or not recording is irrelevant to determining if it is a public way?
The town would record if it wanted to take a fee title in the roadway. And
okay.
The town would have its reasons for not wanting to do that, and so they've not.
Oh, this is an extraordinarily interesting thing, and not only for this particular situation. Kristen, you're our lawyer, and you certainly are. I'll give you the same deference most lawyers want. We're not expecting an opinion right now, but what would you like to add?
Well, I did just have a question for Vinny. Are you arguing that it would have needed to be recorded in order to meet the dedicated to public use portion of the definition as well, or like?
My understanding is in order for the road to be accepted as a public way, there either has to be an existing easement to the town, or what is typically done in a subdivision is the owner, the developer retains the fee in the way and then conveys the fee to the town. That has to be done within 20 days. Or the individuals who own the way deed it to the town. And if none of that occurs, then the town takes it. But the town has never acquired it as a public way. For example, Stagecoach subdivision up off of Hartford Street, which is relatively new. The developer did not retain fee in the way. I'm pretty sure it's Stagecoach, did not retain fee in the way. When the town wanted to accept the way, they required all of the owners under the derelict fee statute to convey their interest in the way to the town. So a substantial portion of the quote unquote acceptance has taken place, but the town never acquired ownership. So who owns it? How is it a public way if the town doesn't own it? How can the town accept it if they don't own it? In my reading of section 24 says the town shall either be deeded, accepted, or if that doesn't happen, take it and pay compensation if appropriate. And in addition, typically or often what happens, and what has happened, I think what happened on Park Avenue, when they took it, in that instance, the neighbors conveyed their interest, which is the abutting property, or very close to actually the property we're on that abuts this intersection. They deeded it to the town, and for no consideration, provided release deeds, and the town had a betterment for actually construction of the road, and that's kind of a typical kind of situation with an older street. Here, it appears there's 3 different roads that were quote unquote accepted. They were laid out. They went through the process. They had a meeting with the selectmen. They had a town vote. The town vote specifically says it was moved, seconded by Mr. Hepburn, that the town accept the laying of Draper Road, Oakley Road is accepted public ways pursuant to the reports and orders. The selectmen's filed with the town clerk as shown in the plans, filed with the town clerk. And this is the important sentence. And that the selectmen be authorized to acquire by purchase or otherwise such interest in said land as may be necessary to accomplish this purpose. That never happened. For this, just fortuitously Tisdale, and I also believe Draper. Yes.
Yeah.
So-
Okay. So your argument is not that it's not open or dedicated to public use, but just that it's not a public way. I think that's what I was trying to get at.
The question is who owns it? If I think everyone in this neighborhood wants that to be a public way, and that's probably something that should be fixed. Because I think that's what everybody wants. But that's not what it is. And a street is a street. I mean, the problem, the concern is potentially, and I don't know, if all of a sudden this kind of a unpaved way that can never be constructed as a street because it meets none of the local regulations, whether it be width, elevation, access, the ability to put in a radius or turnaround, or any of the requirements for a street. It meets none of those. If for some reason the board decided, no, this is a street, that means arguably anybody else can say, oh, I have an 81P plan approval because the town has determined that a non-built street, an unconstructed street is a street. And I think that's a bigger slippery slope than this. And I think that's why the case argued by I don't know if he's still even around.
He's mostly retired at this point, but he's still around.
Is right. A street, if you get approval under the subdivision control law, or, it's been a way around like this has been since 1926. It's interesting that the quote was, if you can't drive a bus on it, or was it a fire truck? If you can't drive a fire truck on it, it's not a street. Now, if you dig even deeper, if you look at sort of the definition of public ways, and you look at the definition under the Mass State Building Code, there are certain minimum limitations for a street. Is it at least 10 feet wide? Is it at least 10 feet high? You don't have that here. And again, I'm trying to argue something what you can't visualize, and maybe
Right.
if you see it. But I think there's 2 issues. I don't think the town ever took it. And I think even if they did, it can't be a street for the purposes of setback.
Vinny, if in fact the town decided it wanted to make it wide enough to be a street, does it have the ability to do that? Does it, or would that be requiring a taking of land on each side.
No, it could do that under the taking. That's how
Yeah,
38 went through. That's why Westfield Street coming from the Polo Club starts in the middle of nowhere. Because 128 cut it off. Yes, the town can do a taking, and in that instance,
yeah.
there's compensation for that. And that's why in the town vote, it says authorized to acquire, purchase, or otherwise purchase, right? That's a taking.
But taking from who then?
Whoever the landowners are, who you're taking the property from.
But I guess that's sort of kind of where my head's at, right? Which is another question, sort of asked a different way. I understand from one of the abutters that they purchased 2 lots, right? They're sort of 7 and 8, and that 8 is sort of entirely blocked off if you don't view that as a street that would allow access to that lot.
Yeah, okay, so this is a perfect example. So I don't know, are you talking like across the street from this piece of property? Like on the third piece?
So right in the very top left corner, right? It's so next to this property.
And their quote unquote frontage is on this unpaved piece of property.
It would presumably be on Oakley Road, as it sort of seems to end at the very end of that.
Yeah, but
in the original whatever map of it.
Yeah, the unpaved portion. Right? I assume.
I'm actually not familiar with the area. I'm just looking at the original whatever.
Oh,
drawing.
7 and 8? Okay. Yeah, so this is the slippery slope I'm talking about. If you say this is a street, then 8 is a buildable lot. It's a buildable lot. I don't think it's a buildable lot because I don't think it has frontage on a street.
But I think according to the map that's whatever 1926 survey map that was provided by one of the abutters, which like that appears to show the road going all the way to the end.
Right, you're right. And the case law that I provided to George Shea versus Lexington is exactly on point. It's exactly the situation where you have an unpaved road that was created 100 years ago, will never be paved. And the guy who owned, in this instance, to be similar to Lot 8, said, "Oh, I have frontage on a street. Give me a building permit." And the Board of Appeals said, "Yeah, it's a street on a piece of paper, but you cannot drive a fire truck on a piece of paper. It's not a street for the purposes of the subdivision control law or for the purposes of setbacks and requirements of that nature." That is
but help me understand that then, because it looks to me, at least according to this 1926 survey, and again, I don't know the veracity of this document or whether it's inaccurate.
Absolutely,
but that it is the exact same width as the balance of Oakley Road. So
I'm sorry, say that again.
The extended part that goes in front of 8 appears to be the exact same width as Oakley Road. So perhaps it hasn't been paved, but nothing seems to prevent it.
Well, there's a number of different things. One, since 1926, the street construction requirements have changed exponentially. This was a plan that was just drawn on a piece of paper. Back in 1926, they weren't concerned about zoning. We didn't even have zoning in Dover till 1933. They were just drawing lines in a plan, sort of. So a couple of different things. The current regulations for a street, this can't meet with elevation requirements for access. Technically, it's a dead-end road. Similar Hutton and Burnham. I don't know if you're familiar with those streets, which are across the street from Dedham Street. There's a 20-unit affordable housing project there, right? The request was to put in 3 lots on a half acre. The town said you can't do that because you'd be extending a dead-end street. It's illegal. So instead of 3 lots, you have 40B. You can't build this street now. So if you say it is a street, if I own lot 8, I'm going down to the building department and getting a building permit. Because under Dover zoning, if you have a lot shown on a plan prior to 1959 that's on a street, you have a lot. And if you say it's a street, they have a lot. Now, maybe they can't build it for other reasons. But that's, and there may be other pieces like that. So it's an interesting discussion, to say the least, whether the town actually owns it. And if it does, I'm assuming arguendo it does. I'm arguing that it's shown on a plan, but for the purposes of being a street for frontage or for setback or for any of those kinds of things, it's not. It's not been paved. It's never been paved. It never will be paved. It has been paved since 1926. If you have a subdivision plan that was approved a year or two ago, it's fairly obvious that within a certain period of time, it will be paved. This is not going to be paved. And when you look at the change in elevation, it would never meet current regulations. So that's what I'm saying. It's a unique situation. But that's the issue. A street is, there are a number of different, well, if you go up to Knollwood Drive, there's a stub road like this shown in a plan that accesses about 20 acres on Center Street. Can't be used. It's not wide enough. So if you say it is good, then that's a bizarre situation. You're saying it is a street. It's not an easy decision. I'm not saying that. It's not a like I said, it's like trying to explain the Pythagorean theorem. And I think seeing it will be instructive.
Okay, attorneys, would it be too much to ask that each of you in one document from each of you, that you lay out your arguments? Vinny, it's very helpful. You've sent me case law and
I'll synthesize it.
But I'd like that. And John Doherty, I think also the same thing, if you want to supplement what you've provided already, because with that, that's going to be very helpful to the board and also to our attorney. Because, we don't want, it would be silly to have Kristen have to do so much from scratch when you have well-considered opinions already. But I think that would be good. I think also to pursue whether, Vinny, your argument is right or wrong. I think at this stage, it certainly makes sense for us to have a site visit and to determine for ourselves, is it possible for a fire truck to go down there or do any of the other things that you say are necessary for this to be a street? And so if that is, I think, what you'd be asking us to do, if in fact your position is correct. I'm pretty sure if I hear John's position correctly, it is simply open and shut matter of law, and site visit, it'd be fine to have one, but it's irrelevant.
John, that's exactly right. Yeah, I think that there's really not a lot of nuance here, and the bottom line is that what's different, I think, from some of the examples that Vinny had mentioned, is that in this case you have a town meeting vote, and that's the gold standard. And he's referring to section 24 pertaining to takings, and that very clearly says if necessary, and the language in the vote also says if necessary. So I mean, Park Avenue there was no taking of Park Avenue. And for context, talking about the buildability of the road, there's a 40-foot layout, which is the same layout for Oakley and Park. And it's worth noting that there's a 40-foot easement all the way to Center Street that the town has. So I think this board has to consider possible changes in 10, 20, 50 years in town, right? So there's that issue. And as far as buildability, the planning board can grant variations to those particular requirements. So you can't say, 52-foot layout, you can't build it. So it doesn't work that way. But I guess my final note would just be that there's town meeting vote here. So I really don't think it's nuanced.
Okay, thank you, John. And one thing, listen, every person is welcome to comment to the board, but I think whether it's the John Doherty view or the Vincent O'Brien view, I am inclined to think that neighbor happiness, pro or con or unhappiness, really, people are allowed to do this, but I don't think we're not for this matter. It would be inappropriate for us to be gauging this by how strongly people feel about it. This is strictly a matter for legal determination. It'd be good if folks knew that, but they're welcome to comment if they want. What we should do, I think, is schedule a site visit. Board members, what makes sense? The last one we did together was fairly early in the morning, and I think I slept through the first half of it. I'm glad not here had my cell phone. But what would be a good time? And certainly, Vinny, we'd like you there. We'd like John there if you want to be. I mean, you're not required to be there, and we're not going to deliberate at a site visit. We really just want to get some facts for ourselves. But what would be a good time for a site visit?
I mean, fortunately, we have daylight savings, so it can be, a little later in the evening before a meeting or something like that. We've done that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Like 6
Meet
or
at
6.
6, then follow up at 7 with a meeting.
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Okay, so we're thinking 6 o'clock, and now also, and Kristen, this is for you, and I know, Vinny, this is really your call also in terms, because you've been helpful in the past about granting extensions. This request was filed January 24th. Now, it's clear it's not a request for variance, so we don't have to have a decision with 100 days of the filing. The closest I can come to thinking what the right time is sort of like special permit. And that means we've started the hearing properly within 65 days of the filing of the application. But we really have up to 90 days following the conclusion of the hearing, if this were special permit. Do you have, Vinny, any idea what would be the applicable thing? And also, I believe I'd like to know that one way or the other. In fact, I'd like to basically say that the time for a decision is within 90 days of concluding the hearing, and that we simply agree to that as if
I
it
would
were
say
special.
we're both on unknown territory. So I would say to you, since this is such a unique situation, that I would agree on behalf of the client that we will accept that time frame for lack of any good decision for another one.
Okay.
And it's possible you might go out and you make a decision in 30 seconds, say, you're nuts, Vinny. So, and Laverne will attest that has happened in the past.
I
Here and
think,
there.
and yeah, we don't, I mean, because we understand construction schedules, other things. We don't want to just drag this out, but it's complicated enough, and actually is an issue that could affect. So we need a legal conclusion that will hold throughout town. Okay, we're thinking 6 o'clock for a site visit. What would you like to do this next week, board members?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. What's a good night?
Let me see. Wednesday? Are we talking April 2nd?
Let's just
No,
see.
we're talking
Third?
March 26th.
Oh, next week. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm free all of that. 26th, 27th,
Great.
28th. Yeah, I'm free all whatever.
How about, is the 26th okay with everyone? And John and Vinny, if you wanted to be there, would that be okay as well?
That works for me.
Yeah, I don't know that I need to be there.
Yeah. And you know, in terms of, actually, wait a minute, notification just needs to be 48 hours in advance, so I can.
So just quickly, I think the 25th or the 27th might be better for me.
Okay,
Actually,
well,
sorry.
The 27th.
No,
works for
actually,
me, too.
Wednesday's fine. Wednesday would be okay.
yeah, 25th wouldn't work with me, but 27th,
No,
27th
let's do,
is
sorry.
fine.
26th is better. Sorry.
is it? Okay.
All right. Yes. Let's stay with the 26th.
Well, great. May I have a motion that we have a site walk on the 26th at 6 p.m.
So moved.
Second,
All in favor, and call out your names.
Mike Donovan, aye.
Nancy Green, aye.
Laverne Lovell, aye.
Nadir Ahmed. Aye.
And George Chimento, aye. Okay,
And
great.
is the hearing going to be immediately following? Is that?
Yeah, I think, well, what I'd like to do, for the hearing itself, I mean, continuing this hearing, we'll have the site visit. I would like to have each attorney within, I would say by no later than close of business of the 28th. Have your precedent, your positions in a good document, just as if you were submitting this to a court, and have that to us by close of business March 28th. We'll then give that to Kristen, and Kristen, at that point, let's say you've got all of this. Are you traveling or anything the following week or two? I don't know how much time you might need. And
No.
you could actually do some research in the meantime. I think you know what the issues are.
Yeah, definitely. I already have some some stuff done on it. So if they turn materials to you by the 28th, I'm just pulling up my calendar. When did you say you'd like to have the hearing by?
Well, I think at this point, we've got under Vinny has already agreed that the time for decision will be 90 days after conclusion of the hearing, as if
We've got a little bit of time.
special permit. So we've got time to do that. And Vinny and I will get something signed and give it to Felicia for the record. But I would say April 10th works. And what did we just decide for Tisdale? We're doing that
30th.
April 30th. So I think it would be nice and courteous, I think, to the applicants for this, if we could meet on the 10th and just limit that strictly to this matter. So we'd be meeting twice in April, once on the 10th and once on the 30th.
It's all right with me.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know about everybody else.
Okay, so listen, I mean, with all these meetings, let's ask for doubling our salary from the town. Hey. Okay. Good. So I think then we've had the vote. Let's see, have we had the vote on the 10th yet? I think we need to have a vote to have our next meeting, the continuance of this on the 10th at 7 p.m.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay.
Second.
Great. Okay, and all in favor, sound off. With
Nancy
me.
Green,
Laverne Lovell,
Nadir Ahmed. Aye.
Mike,
you're on mute.
you're mute.
Mike Donovan, aye.
Okay, and George Chimento, aye. All right. I think the next is our favorite vote of the evening, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
so moved.
Second,
Okay.
No.
And
Nadir Ahmed. Aye.
Mike Donovan, aye.
Nancy Green, aye.
Laverne Lovell, aye.
and George Chimento, double eyes. Hey, thanks very much. It's great. And
Nice to meet you, Kristen.
see you.
Thanks, everyone.
As well. Good to see
Thank
you
you.
all.
Okay.
That's
Bye-bye.
Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Did we say 6 o'clock?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, I was writing it down in my book. All right.
You got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Night.
Bye-bye.